There are moments, rare, undeniable moments, when something interrupts your normal routine in a way you cannot explain. You weren't searching for this. You weren't expecting this. And yet, here you are, reading these exact words, at this exact time. Pause for a second and really think about that. Out of all the distractions, all the noise, all the endless scrolling, something made you stop here. Something held your attention just long enough for this message to reach your eyes. This is not random. This is not coincidence. And deep down you already feel that. There has been a subtle tension in your spirit lately, hasn't there? A feeling you couldn't quite name. Not fear exactly, but not peace either. Something in your environment has felt slightly off. Conversations that didn't sit right. Silence that felt heavier than usual. People acting almost the same but not quite. You brushed it off at first. You told yourself it was nothing. But the feeling didn't leave. It lingered. It followed you into quiet moments. It whispered when everything else was still. The feeling brought you here. Because what you are experiencing is not overthinking. It is awareness awakening. And now, the interruption becomes clear. This message is not here to entertain you. It is not here to simply inspire you. It is here to interrupt you, to pull you out of distraction, and place you directly into alignment with something urgent unfolding around you. Something that has your name attached to it. Something that has been developing quietly, strategically, and without your knowledge. You were not meant to discover this later. You were meant to discover this now. That is why the tone feels different. That is why your focus sharpened. That is why you didn't scroll past like you usually would. Because on a deeper level, your spirit recognized something your mind is just beginning to understand. This is a moment of divine timing. There is a reason urgency is pressing against your chest right now. There is a reason your curiosity feels stronger than usual. There is a reason this message feels like it's speaking directly to you. Not generally, not vaguely, but personally. Because it is. Something has shifted behind the scenes of your life. Not in the visible world, not yet. But in the unseen layers where decisions are made before outcomes appear. And while everything on the surface may still look normal, something beneath it has already begun to move. That is why this interruption had to happen. Because if it didn't, you would continue forward unaware, unprepared, unprotected from something that is already forming momentum. But now you are no longer walking blindly. Now you are aware. And awareness changes everything. This is the moment where your attention becomes your protection. Where your stillness becomes your strategy. Where your willingness to listen becomes the very thing that separates you from loss. You are not here by accident. You are here because something in you is ready to see what others are ignoring. Ready to hear what others are missing. Ready to respond before it's too late. And as this message unfolds, you will begin to understand why this interruption was necessary and why May 28th is not just another day, but a turning point that was always meant to find you. Stay with this. Do not rush past this moment. Because what comes next will reveal what your spirit has been trying to warn you about all along. Type "I am aware" in the comments if you feel this message reaching you. Blessing code 1111 is now activated. There are days and then there are days. Days that pass like any other, and days that carry a weight you can feel before you can explain it. May 28th is not just another date on a calendar. It is not random. It is not neutral. It is a moment that has been marked long before you ever became aware of it. A moment that exists not just in time, but in alignment with something unfolding beneath the surface of your life. You may have noticed something unusual building as this date approaches. quiet pleasure, a sense that time feels different, almost accelerated, like things are moving faster but without clear direction. You may have felt distracted more easily, or strangely focused on things that don't normally hold your attention. This is not coincidence. This is the atmosphere shifting in response to something being set into motion behind the scenes. Because when a moment like May 28th approaches, the energy around it begins to ripple outward before the day itself even arrives. That ripple is what you are feeling. There is a reason certain days feel heavier than others, even when nothing obvious is happening. It is because decisions are being made before they are revealed. Conversations are happening before they reach your ears. Agreements are forming before they impact your reality. And right now, something is aligning itself with this specific date, something that carries consequences if left unnoticed. That is why urgency is being placed on you now, not later. Because once a moment like this passes, it does not simply disappear. It activates. It sets into motion what has already been prepared. And if you are unaware when it activates, you are forced to react instead of respond. You are placed in a position where you must deal with outcomes rather than influence them. But you are not being left in that position. You are being brought into awareness before the activation. That is the difference between being caught off guard and being spiritually prepared. May 28th is not dangerous because of what it is on the surface. It is significant because of what is being attached to it. Think about that carefully. The date itself is neutral, but what is being scheduled, planned, or agreed upon in alignment with the day is what gives it power. And right now, something is being aligned with that date that involves you, even if your name is not being spoken openly. That is why this message feels urgent, because time is already moving toward that moment. You may feel like you still have space, like there is still time to wait, to observe, to delay your response. But what you must understand is that preparation does not happen at the moment of impact. It happens before. It happens in the awareness stage, in the quiet moments where you begin to notice what others overlook. And this is one of those moments. You are being shown that something is not right before it becomes visible to everyone else. You are being given a chance to shift your position, to observe more carefully, to step back from certain patterns, conversations, or assumptions that may no longer serve you. Because once May 28th arrives, what has been hidden will begin to take form. And when it does, it will move quickly. That is why Archangel Michael's presence carries command rather than suggestion. Because there is no room for passive attention right now. There is no space for ignoring what your intuition has already been trying to tell you. You have felt something shifting. You have sensed something misaligned. And now that feeling is being confirmed, not to create fear, but to sharpen your awareness. You are not being asked to panic. You are being called to prepare. There is a difference. Preparation is calm. It is focused. It is intentional. It is the ability to observe without reacting, to notice without immediately confronting, to position yourself without drawing unnecessary attention. And that is exactly what you are being guided into now. Because May 28th is not just a deadline. It is a threshold. A point where what has been forming quietly begins to cross into reality. And you are standing just before that threshold, not by accident, but by design. You have time right now, but it is not unlimited. It is precise. It is intentional. And what you do with your awareness in this moment will determine how you experience what comes next. This is why you cannot dismiss this feeling. This is why you cannot ignore the shift. This is why you were interrupted and brought here. Because something is aligning with May 28th that requires you to be present, alert, and fully aware of what is unfolding around you. And as you continue, you will begin to understand exactly what is being planned and why it was never meant for you to see it this early. Type "I am prepared" in the comments if you are ready to stay alert. Blessing code 2222 is now activated. There are plans that unfold in the open, and then there are plans that are designed in silence, carefully constructed in spaces where your presence is intentionally excluded. What you must understand now is that something is being arranged without your awareness, and it is not accidental that you were left out of it. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not poor communication. This is deliberate distance, created so that a certain outcome can take shape without interference. You may have already sensed this on a subtle level. Moments where conversations seemed to stop when you entered the room. Situations where decisions appeared already finalized before you were even informed. Small inconsistencies that didn't fully make sense but also didn't feel significant enough to confront. You told yourself it was nothing. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You chose peace over suspicion. But now, you are being asked to look again, not with fear, but with clarity. Because what is forming is not random. It is structured. There is an agreement taking place, not necessarily written, not necessarily spoken in direct terms, but understood between certain individuals who share a common intention. And that intention does not fully align with your best interest. This is what makes it dangerous, not because it is loud or obvious, but because it is quiet and coordinated. It moves under the surface, gaining strength through silence and assumption, relying on the fact that you will not notice until it has already taken effect. That is why this message came early. Because once something like this is completed, it becomes much harder to reverse. Not impossible, but more complex, more entangled, more difficult to untangle without consequence. Right now, you are being positioned before the final stage, before the agreement becomes action, before the action becomes outcome. And this is where your awareness matters most. You must begin to observe more carefully. Not react, not confront, but observe. Pay attention to patterns rather than isolated moments. Notice who communicates clearly with you and who avoids directness. Notice who includes you and who consistently operates around you. These are not small details anymore. They are indicators. They are signals pointing toward something larger that is being constructed in pieces. The agreement itself may not look harmful on the surface. In fact, it may appear reasonable, even justified, when eventually revealed. That is part of its design. It is meant to be presented in a way that minimizes resistance, in a way that makes it seem like a natural progression rather than a calculated move. But what you are being shown now is the intention behind it, not just the appearance. And intention changes everything. Because when intention is misaligned, even a seemingly harmless decision can carry consequences that extend far beyond what is visible in the moment. This is why you cannot afford to remain passive. Not because you need to intervene immediately, but because you need to understand what is happening before it reaches you in a form that demands a reaction. There is also something else you need to recognize. Not everyone involved sees themselves as doing something wrong. Some may believe they are acting logically, protecting their own interests, or simply following a path that benefits them. But that does not mean the outcome will not affect you. Intent does not erase impact. And right now, impact is what is being formed. This is why Archangel Michael's message carries authority. Not to create fear, but to cut through the illusion of normalcy that has been surrounding this situation. What feels ordinary is not entirely ordinary. What feels settled is not entirely settled. There is movement beneath the surface, and you are now aware of it. The agreement is still forming, but it is close to completion. And once it is complete, it will move forward quickly, with little room for adjustment. That is why this moment matters. You are not being asked to control what others are doing. You are being called to control how you position yourself in response to what is unfolding. Awareness gives you that power. It gives you the ability to step back, to reassess, to ensure that you are not unknowingly aligning yourself with something that could later work against you. Because once the agreement becomes visible, it will already be in motion. And by then, most people will only see the result, not the process that created it. But you are seeing the process now, and that changes your role completely. You are no longer just part of the situation. You are now aware of it before it reaches its final form. Type ISE clearly in the comments if this is resonating with you. Lesson code 3333 is now activated. As this truth settles into your spirit, understand this: every time light is revealed, it is not just for you, but for countless others still walking in confusion. When you choose to support this mission, you are not giving to a message. You are sowing into awakening, into clarity, into the lives of people who are one moment away from missing what heaven is trying to show them. The word declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And right now, that promise is alive, calling you into action. I feel led to say this directly. I am stepping forward in obedience, and I invite you to do the same. Your seed becomes a torch. Your offering becomes a voice. Your action becomes a ripple that reaches souls you may never meet. This is not a casual moment. This is a prophetic opportunity to align your giving with divine timing. As you release through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, you are activating a flow that heaven will multiply back into your life. Step into this now, and let your giving speak where words cannot. There is something you must come to terms with now. Something that may feel uncomfortable at first, but will ultimately bring you clarity. The individuals connected to this hidden agreement are not distant strangers. They are not unknown figures operating from far away. They are familiar. Their presence in your life has been normalized over time. Their voices are not new to you. Their behavior has never appeared extreme enough to raise alarm. And that is precisely why this situation hath been able to develop unnoticed for so long. Familiarity has a way of lowering awareness. When someone is consistently present in your environment, your mind begins to categorize them as safe by default. You stop analyzing their actions deeply. You assume consistency in their intentions. You rely on past experiences to define present behavior. But what you are being shown now is that familiarity does not always equal alignment. Someone can be close to you in proximity, yet completely misalign with where you are going. This is where discernment becomes necessary. Because the faces behind this agreement are not acting in ways that are obviously harmful. They are not openly opposing you. They are not creating visible conflict. Instead, they are operating within a space that feels neutral, even supportive at times. They speak in ways that sound reasonable. They behave in ways that seem cooperative. But underneath that surface, there is a divergence in direction, a quiet separation between what benefits them and what protects you. That separation is what you are now beginning to recognize. You may start to replay past interactions differently. Conversations that once felt ordinary may now feel slightly calculated. Decisions that seemed spontaneous may now appear pre-planned. Small details you overlooked before may begin to stand out with more clarity. This is not your imagination. This is your awareness adjusting to a deeper level of perception. Because once you become aware of misalignment, it becomes impossible to ignore it. There is also a pattern you need to pay attention to. These individuals may not act alone. There is often a subtle coordination, a shared understanding that does not require direct communication in your presence. It shows up in timing. It shows up in the way information is shared selectively. It shows up in how certain topics are avoided or redirected when you are involved. None of this is obvious in isolation. But when viewed as a pattern, it reveals something much more intentional. And intention is what defines the situation. It is important to understand that not all misalignment comes from negative motives. Some people act based on their own priorities, their own limitations, or their own fears. They make decisions that serve their perspective without fully considering how it affects others. But regardless of the reason, the outcome remains the same. If their actions lead to a situation that compromises your position, then you must acknowledge it for what it is. This is not about labeling anyone as an enemy. This is about recognizing that not everyone in your environment is moving in the same direction as you. And when directions differ, outcomes conflict. That is why Archangel Michael's message carries a tone of command rather than suggestion. Because once misalignment reaches a certain point, it no longer corrects itself naturally. It begins to solidify into decisions, into actions, into agreements that move forward whether you are ready or not. You are being shown this now so you can adjust your awareness before those decisions fully take shape. There is another important aspect you must consider. The people involved may not expect you to notice anything. They may assume that you will continue to trust the surface of what is being presented. They may believe that your perspective will remain unchanged because nothing has been directly confronted. And in many cases, that assumption is what allows situations like this to progress without resistance. But that assumption no longer applies to you. Because now, you are observing more closely. Now, you are paying attention to what is said and what is not said. Now, you are recognizing that consistency in behavior matters more than occasional reassurance. This shift in awareness changes your position completely. You are no longer simply participating in your environment. You are evaluating it. You are noticing where alignment exists and where it does not. You are understanding that trust is not just built on history, but on present consistency and transparency. And this understanding is what will protect you moving forward. Because once the faces behind the agreement become clear, even if they are not openly revealed, you will no longer interpret their actions at face value. You will see them within the context of what you now know is unfolding. And that changes everything. Type "I discern" clearly in the comments if you are recognizing the patterns. Lesson code 4444 is now activated. There comes a moment in every unfolding situation where awareness alone is not enough. A moment where what you see must begin to influence how you position yourself. And this is that moment for you. Because now that you are aware something is being formed behind your back, silence no longer carries the same meaning it once did. Before, silence may have been peace. Before, silence may have been patience. Before, silence may have been trust. But now, in this specific situation, silence has a different weight. It has consequences. You must understand this clearly. Silence, when you are unaware, is natural. Silence, when you are aware, becomes a decision. And every decision carries an outcome. If you choose to ignore what you are sensing now, if you push it aside and convince yourself that it is not significant, then you are not simply maintaining peace. You are allowing something to continue forming without any internal adjustment on your part. You are staying in the same position while everything around you shifts in a direction that may not include your protection. That is the true cost of silence. It is not immediate. It does not appear all at once. It builds gradually. It reveals itself later, when decisions have already been finalized, when outcomes have already taken shape, when your ability to influence the situation hath been reduced. That is when silence turns into realization. You may begin to notice it as a sudden shift, something that feels like it came out of nowhere, a decision that affects you, but that you had no part in, an outcome that seems unfair, yet is already in motion. And in that moment, the question arises, when did this begin? The answer is now. This is the stage where everything is still forming, still flexible, still influenced by awareness and positioning. This is the stage where your silence still has the ability to either protect you or cost you. Because silence does not just mean saying nothing. It also means not adjusting, not observing differently, not changing how you engage with what is unfolding. And that is where the real impact lies. There is something important you need to recognize. You are not being asked to confront anyone aggressively. You are not being told to disrupt everything around you. But you are being called to stop operating as if nothing is happening. Because something is happening, and continuing as if everything is normal will only place you further into a position where you are reacting instead of preparing. Preparation is the opposite of costly silence. Preparation means you begin to create space between yourself and what feels uncertain. It means you become more intentional with your words, your decisions, your level of involvement. It means you start to evaluate where your energy is being invested and whether it is aligned with your protection. Because what you stand to lose is not always obvious at first. It may not be something physical or immediate. It could be influence. It could be trust. It could be positioning. It could be access to something that was originally meant to include you. These are the kinds of losses that are often overlooked until they are already gone. And once they are gone, rebuilding them takes far more effort than protecting them in the first place. This is why the message carries urgency. Not to create fear, but to highlight timing. Because timing determines whether you prevent a loss or respond to it. Right now, you are still in the position to prevent. But that window is not indefinite. As May 28th approaches, the agreement that is forming will begin to solidify. What is currently flexible will become fixed. What is currently hidden will become active. And once it reaches that stage, your options become more limited, not because you are powerless, but because the situation has already advanced beyond the point of early intervention. That is why your silence matters now more than ever. You must redefine what silence means for you in this moment. It is no longer about avoiding conflict. It is about choosing awareness over assumption. It is about remaining calm while becoming more observant. It is about stepping back internally, even if everything externally appears unchanged. Because this is not the time to drift. This is the time to be intentional. There is also a deeper layer to this. Sometimes silence comes from hesitation. A hesitation to accept that something is not aligned. A hesitation to question familiar dynamics. A hesitation to trust your own perception because it challenges what you believe to be stable. But growth requires you to move beyond that hesitation. It requires you to trust what you are now seeing, even if it feels uncomfortable. Because ignoring discomfort does not remove the situation. It only delays your response to it. And delay is what this moment cannot afford. You are being given clarity before consequence. That is your advantage. That is your opportunity. And what you do with that opportunity will determine whether this situation passes as a lesson or becomes a loss. Type "I choose awareness" in the comments if you are ready to move with clarity. Lesson code 5555 is now activated. There is a difference between a suggestion and a command. A suggestion allows room for delay. A suggestion can be considered, postponed, or even ignored without immediate consequence. But a command carries urgency. It carries authority. It carries timing that cannot be stretched without cost. And this is where you now find yourself, not in a moment of suggestion, but in a moment of command. When Archangel Michael speaks with this level of intensity, it is not to create pressure without purpose. It is because the window you are standing in is narrow. It is precise. It is not meant to remain open indefinitely. And the actions you take within this window, even if they are quiet, internal, and strategic, will determine how protected you are when everything around you begins to shift. You must understand something very clearly. Acting immediately does not mean reacting impulsively. It does not mean confronting people without clarity. It does not mean creating conflict or exposing what you know prematurely. That is not what this command is asking of you. Acting immediately means aligning yourself without delay. It means adjusting your awareness, your posture, your decisions right now, rather than waiting for more obvious proof. Because by the time proof becomes obvious, the situation will already be in motion. This is why delay is dangerous in this moment. Delay creates a false sense of safety. It convinces you that there is still time later, that you can address things when they become clearer, when they become undeniable. But what you are being shown now is the stage before undeniability. This is the stage where clarity is quiet, where signs are subtle, where everything can still be dismissed if you choose comfort over awareness. And that is exactly why this command has come now. You are being told to move internally before anything forces you to move externally. There is something powerful about acting early. When you act early, you move with control. You move with calm. You move with intention. But when you act late, you move with urgency that feels like pressure. You move in response rather than in preparation. And that shift changes everything about your experience. Right now, you still have control. You still have the ability to step back and observe without being entangled. You still have the ability to make decisions quietly that protect your position without drawing attention. You still have the ability to redirect your energy, your focus, your involvement in ways that others may not even notice. But that control depends on whether you act now or wait. Archangel Michael's command is not about forcing you into fear. It is about removing hesitation. Because hesitation is what keeps you in the same position while everything around you continues to move forward. Hesitation creates a gap between what you know and what you do. And in moments like this, that gap becomes costly. You already know enough to act. You already feel enough to recognize that something is not aligned. You already sense enough to understand that waiting will not bring more clarity. It will only bring more consequences. That is why the command is direct. There is also another layer to this that you must recognize. Acting immediately is not only about protecting yourself from what is being planned. It is also about strengthening your position moving forward. When you respond to awareness with action, even quiet action, you begin to realign yourself with clarity. You step out of passive participation and into intentional presence. That shift alone changes how you move, how you observe, how you decide. It places you in a position where you are no longer being carried by circumstances, but actively navigating them. And that is exactly where you need to be as May 28th approaches. Because what is coming will not wait for you to feel ready. It will move regardless. And the only question is whether you will meet it prepared or unprepared. Acting immediately also means trusting what has already been revealed to you. It means not second-guessing your awareness. It means not returning to the comfort of denial simply because it feels easier. Because ease in this moment is not protection. Awareness is. You are being guided to shift now, not later. To adjust now, not after. To position yourself now, while everything is still forming. Because once it forms fully, your ability to influence it decreases. This is your moment of alignment. Your moment of decision. Your moment to move quietly but decisively in a way that protects what matters most to you. And whether anyone else sees it or not does not matter. Because this command was not given to them. It was given to you. Type "I move with clarity" in the comments if you are ready to act without delay. Blessing code 6666 is now activated. There is something deeper at work beneath what you can see. Something that goes beyond physical agreements, spoken conversations, or visible decisions. What is forming is not just a practical arrangement. It is a contract on a level that most people never stop to consider. Not a contract written on paper, not one signed in ink, but one created through alignment, intention, and unspoken agreement between minds that have decided to move in the same direction. This is what makes it powerful. Because contracts of this nature do not require formal acknowledgement to exist. They form when two or more individuals begin to share the same intention, when they reinforce each other's perspective, when they act in ways that support a common outcome. Over time, this shared intention gains momentum. It begins to solidify. It begins to influence decisions, timing, and behavior in ways that appear natural on the surface, but are actually guided by something much more coordinated underneath. And this is exactly what is happening around you now. What you are witnessing is the formation of a contract built through repeated alignment. Conversations that reinforce certain ideas. Decisions that move in a consistent direction. Silence that allowed certain assumptions to grow without challenge. All of these elements have combined to create something that now carries weight. That weight is what gives the agreement power. You must understand that words are not the only things that create impact. Intention carries its own force. When someone consistently holds a particular intention, especially when that intention is supported by others, it begins to shape outcomes. It begins to influence how situations unfold, how opportunities are directed, how decisions are justified. This is why you felt something before you could explain it. Because your awareness picked up on the intention before the outcome became visible. And now, that intention is close to becoming action. There is a critical point in every situation like this where intention crosses into reality. A moment where what has been discussed, implied, or assumed begins to take form through actual decisions. That is the stage you are approaching now. And once that transition happens, the contract becomes active. When a contract becomes active, it no longer exists as a possibility. It becomes a path that others begin to follow automatically. It influences behavior without requiring constant reinforcement. It moves forward on its own momentum. That is why this stage is so important. Because you are still before activation. You are still in the phase where awareness can interrupt alignment. This does not mean you need to confront the contract directly. It means you need to understand how it works so you can avoid being unconsciously bound by it. Because the most powerful contracts are the ones people step into without realizing it. You may be expected to agree with something later that has already been decided. You may be presented with a situation that feels like it has no alternative, when in reality, the alternatives were removed earlier in the process. You may be placed in a position where saying no feels difficult because everything has already been framed as final. That is how these contracts extend their influence. But your awareness now changes that. Because once you recognize that something has been forming without your input, you no longer accept outcomes at face value. You begin to question timing. You begin to observe how decisions are presented. You begin to notice whether you are being included in the process or only informed after it is complete. This shift protects you. There is also something else you must hold on to. Not all contracts are permanent. They rely on continued alignment to maintain their strength. If alignment is disrupted, if awareness breaks the pattern, if someone steps out of agreement internally, the contract weakens. That is where your power lies. You do not need to dismantle everything externally. You need to ensure that you are not internally aligned with something that does not serve you. Because once you remove your alignment, you remove your participation. And without your participation, the contract cannot affect you in the same way. This is why Archangel Michael's command to act immediately connects directly to this moment. Because if you wait until the contract is fully active, stepping out becomes more complex. Not impossible, but more difficult. Right now, stepping back is simple. Right now, adjusting your position is quiet. Right now, realigning yourself is something only you need to know. But soon, it will become visible. And visible shifts always attract reaction. This is your moment to move before reaction is required. To understand before explanation is demanded. To step out before being pulled in. Because what is forming is real. It is true. It is intentional. But it is not beyond your awareness. And awareness, when used correctly, is what prevents you from being bound by something you never agreed to in the first place. Type "I break misalignment" in the comments if you are choosing clarity over confusion. Blessing code 7777 is now activated. There is a moment in every hidden situation when concealment can no longer sustain itself. A moment when everything that has been carefully arranged in silence begins to shift under the pressure of its own weight. That moment is approaching now, and it is what can be called the exposure phase. This is not a slow unraveling. This is not something that reveals itself gently over time. When exposure begins, it often feels sudden, almost unexpected, even though the signs were present long before it happened. You must understand this clearly. What is hidden does not remain hidden indefinitely, especially when it is built on misalignment, especially when it involves decisions that affect others without their awareness. There comes a point where the structure begins to reveal itself, not because someone chooses to expose it directly, but because the truth can no longer remain contained within the agreement that created it. And that is the stage you are moving toward now. The agreement that has been forming behind your back is reaching a level where it must begin to show itself in practical ways. It may come through a conversation that feels slightly off. It may appear as a decision that is presented to you as already finalized. It may reveal itself through a detail that does not align with what you were previously told. However it appears, it will not match the version of reality you were led to believe. That mismatches your confirmation. Because exposure does not always come with full explanation. It comes through inconsistencies. It comes through sudden clarity where confusion once existed. It comes through moments where things no longer add up the way they used to. And in those moments, your awareness will connect the pieces faster than your mind expects. You will begin to see how the pattern formed. You will begin to understand how certain people were involved. You will begin to recognize why certain details were withheld. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is why preparation was necessary before this phase. Because when exposure happens without preparation, it can trigger reaction. It can create emotional responses that lead to rushed decisions, unnecessary confrontation, or actions that place you at a disadvantage. But when you are prepared, when you have already stepped into awareness, exposure becomes something different. It becomes clarity. It becomes confirmation. It becomes the moment where everything you sensed finally makes sense. There is also something else you must be ready for. Not everyone will acknowledge the truth immediately when it surfaces. Some may attempt to explain it away. Some may minimize its importance. Some may present it in a way that makes it seem less intentional than it actually was. This is part of the exposure phase as well. Because when something hidden is revealed, there is often an attempt to control how it is perceived. That is why your clarity must remain internal before it becomes external. You do not need immediate validation from others to recognize what is real. You do not need full confession from those involved to confirm what has already been revealed to you. Your awareness is enough. Your observation is enough. Your ability to connect the pattern is enough. This is where your strength will be tested, not in whether you see the truth, but in how you respond to it. Because exposure creates a moment of decision. You can either be pulled into reaction, or you can remain grounded in clarity. You can either engage immediately, or you can observe further before choosing your next step. You can either allow the situation to dictate your response, or you can maintain control over how you move forward. And control, in this moment, is everything. Because what you do after exposure determines how much power the situation continues to have over you. If you react without clarity, you give it more control. If you respond with awareness, you reclaim your position. This is why this phase is not something to fear. It is something to be ready for. Because exposure is not the end of the situation. It is the turning point. The moment where what was hidden loses its advantage. The moment where you are no longer operating without full understanding. The moment where you step out of confusion and into clear perception. And once that happens, everything changes. Because you are no longer guessing. You are no longer assuming. You are no longer unaware. You are seeing things exactly as they are. And that clarity will guide every decision you make next. Type "I see the truth" in the comments if you are ready for clarity. Lesson code 8888 is now activated. As this truth begins to rise within you, understand that revelation is never meant to stop with one person. What you are receiving right now is a light, and every light is meant to multiply. When you sow into this mission, you are not supporting a message. You are expanding truth into lives that are still walking in hidden confusion. The word speaks. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And right now, you are part of that light. I feel this deeply and I act on it. And I am calling you to step into that same obedience with me. Your giving becomes a seed of revelation. A stream that reaches someone standing exactly where you once stood. This is not a passive moment. This is a prophetic response to what you have just received. Release your seed through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code before you, and let heaven multiply what you have sown into something far greater than you can see. Now that you have seen how the agreement forms, how the misalignment operates, and how exposure begins to surface, there is something critical you must understand about your position in all of this. You are not just an observer of what is unfolding. You are not just someone being affected by it. You have been placed here, in this moment of awareness, because you have a role to play before everything fully activates. You are the interceptor. And that role is not loud. It is not reactive. It is not driven by confrontation. It is precise. It is controlled. It is intentional. Because interception does not mean stopping everything externally. It means interrupting alignment internally before it gains full control over your direction. This is where your power becomes real. Because up until now, everything that has been forming has relied on one key factor: your unawareness. It relied on the assumption that you would continue moving in the same way, thinking in the same patterns, responding in the same manner, without ever realizing that something had shifted around you. Assumption allowed the agreement to grow without resistance. But that assumption is no longer valid. You are aware now, and awareness disrupts the process. The moment you stop engaging with something the same way, the moment you stop aligning with what is being subtly directed, the moment you step back and begin to choose your responses carefully, the entire structure begins to weaken in its ability to affect you. Not because it disappears, but because you are no longer participating in it the same way. This is interception. It is not about forcing others to change. It is about refusing to be unconsciously pulled into what they are building. You must begin to make small but deliberate shifts. Not dramatic ones that draw attention, but intentional ones that protect your position. Pay attention to where your agreement is being assumed. Notice where your silence might be interpreted as acceptance. Observe where decisions are being presented to you as final, without your input. These are the points where interception matters most. Because interception happens in the space between awareness and action. You do not need to announce what you see. You do not need to reveal your understanding. You simply need to stop reinforcing what does not align with you. And that alone changes the outcome more than you realize. There is also something else you must hold on to. Interception requires discipline. It requires you to remain calm even when clarity increases. Because once you begin to see everything more clearly, there may be a temptation to respond immediately, to correct, to question, to confront. But timing matters. And this is not yet the moment for outward reaction. This is the moment for inward positioning. Because the more grounded you are internally, the stronger your position becomes externally when the time to act visibly arrives. If you move too early, without full clarity, you risk stepping into a situation that is still forming. If you move too late, you risk reacting to something that has already taken shape. But right now, you are in the exact moment where interception is most effective. This is where you quietly remove yourself from assumptions. This is where you stop agreeing without full understanding. This is where you begin to observe intentions rather than just words. This is where you align yourself only with what is clear, direct, and transparent. And anything that does not meet that standard, you step back from. This is not withdrawal. This is precision. You are choosing where your presence goes. You are choosing where your energy is invested. You are choosing what you align with and what you do not. And those choices create a boundary that the agreement cannot easily cross. Because the agreement requires your passive participation to fully impact you. Without that participation, it loses its reach. This is why your role is so important. You are not powerless in this situation. You are positioned at the exact point where awareness can still influence outcome. Positioned at the exact moment where quiet decisions can create strong protection. Positioned before activation, before exposure completes, before everything becomes fixed. And what you do now determines how much of this situation will truly affect you. Because not everything that is planned has to reach you. Not everything that is formed has to bind you. Not everything that is intended has to succeed against you. But that depends on whether you step fully into your role now. Not later. Not after everything is revealed. But now, while everything is still forming. Type I intercept and realign in the comments if you are stepping into your role. Blessing code 9999 is now activated. There is something you must understand in this moment that changes everything about how you see what is unfolding. You are not navigating this situation alone. You are not exposed in the way you may have initially feared. Because the very reason you became aware before everything activated is proof that protection has already been placed around you. Protection does not always look like prevention. Sometimes, protection looks like revelation. It looks like being shown what others cannot see. It looks like feeling what others ignore. It looks like being pulled into awareness before something reaches its full impact. And that is exactly what has happened here. You were not left to discover this too late. You were not placed in a position where you had no time to prepare. You were interrupted early, guided into clarity, and positioned with awareness before the situation fully formed. That is not coincidence. That is protection in motion. There is a shield around you right now, but it is not physical. It is not something you can see directly. It is built through awareness, through timing, through the ability to recognize misalignment before it becomes consequence. This kind of protection does not remove the situation entirely. It ensures that the situation does not control you, and that distinction is critical. Because you may still see the agreement unfold. You may still witness the exposure. You may still observe the actions of those involved. But what you will not experience is the full weight of what was intended against you. Because you are no longer in the same position you were in before you became aware. You have already stepped outside of passive involvement. You have already begun to shift your alignment. You have already created distance between yourself and what is being formed. And that distance is part of your protection. There is also something else happening that you may not fully realize yet. The moment you became aware, the dynamic around you began to change. Not visibly, not in a way that others would immediately notice, but internally. The way you observe, the way you interpret, the way you respond, all of it has shifted. And that shift creates a barrier. Because what is being planned relies on predictability. It relies on you responding the way you always have. It relies on you remaining consistent in your behavior so that the outcome can unfold as expected. But you are no longer predictable in that way. Your awareness has changed your pattern. And when your pattern changes, the structure built around your previous pattern begins to lose its accuracy. That is another form of protection. Because now, even if the agreement moves forward, it will not interact with you in the way it was originally designed to. It will encounter resistance, not through confrontation, but through misalignment. It will not find the same level of access it once had, and that limits its reach. You must also recognize that protection does not remove your responsibility. It supports your awareness, but it does not replace your action. The shield is there, but you must remain within it. And remaining within it means continuing to move with clarity, continuing to observe, continuing to make decisions that align with what you now understand. If you ignore what you have seen, you step outside of that protection. If you dismiss your awareness, you weaken that shield. But if you remain grounded in what has been revealed, the protection strengthens. Because it works with you, not independently of you. There is a calm that comes with this realization. Not a false sense of security, but a steady understanding that you are not behind, that you are not late, that you are not unprepared. You are exactly where you need to be at this moment in time. You have seen what you needed to see. You have recognized what you needed to recognize. You have shifted in the way you needed to shift. And that is what activates the protection fully. As May 28th approaches, this shield will remain around you, but its strength depends on your consistency. Continue to move with awareness. Continue to trust what you have observed. Continue to align yourself with clarity rather than assumption. Because protection is not just something placed over you. It is something you participate in. And right now, you are fully within it. Type "I am protected" and aligned in the comments if you feel this truth. Blessing code 1010 is now activated. There comes a moment in every unfolding situation where everything shifts from observation to outcome, from awareness to action, from uncertainty to clarity. The moment is what you are approaching now. Is the turning point. The place where what was almost taken from you no longer has the same access, no longer carries the same power, no longer moves forward unchecked. Up until now, everything had been about recognition, seeing what is forming, understanding who is involved, realizing how the agreement was structured and how it was meant to affect you. But a turning point is different. It is not just about seeing. It is about reclaiming. Because what was being arranged behind your back was not just a decision. It was positioning. It was influence. It was access to something that rightfully involved you, whether directly or indirectly. And if left unnoticed, it would have shifted that position away from you without resistance. But that did not happen, because you became aware before completion, and awareness interrupted the process. This is where everything changes. You are no longer standing in a place where something is being taken without your knowledge. You are now standing in a place where you can reclaim your position before the outcome becomes permanent. That does not always mean reversing everything externally. Sometimes, reclaiming is internal first. It is recognizing your value, your role, your place in the situation, and refusing to allow it to be quietly replaced or diminished. That internal shift is powerful, because once you recognize what is yours, you no longer accept outcomes that exclude you without question. You no longer assume that what is presented is the only option. You no longer step back automatically when something feels misaligned. Instead, you begin to hold your ground, not aggressively, but with certainty. Certainty is what defines this turning point, because uncertainty is what allows situations like this to move forward without resistance. Uncertainty creates hesitation. It creates doubt. It creates a gap between what you sense and what you act on. But now, that gap has closed. You have seen enough. You understand enough. And that understanding removes the hesitation that once kept you passive. There is also something else that happens at this stage. When you shift internally, others begin to sense it, even if they cannot explain it. The dynamic changes. The assumptions they held about how you would respond begin to weaken. The certainty they had about the outcome begins to shift. Not because you have confronted anything directly, but because your presence is no longer the same. You are no longer moving unconsciously within the situation. You are present. You are aware. You are intentional. And that alone disrupts more than you realize. Because what was being planned depended on a version of you that no longer exists. It depended on you remaining unaware, remaining consistent in your previous patterns, remaining predictable in your responses. But you have already stepped beyond that version of yourself. That is what makes this a turning point. You are not reacting to what is happening. You are influencing how it will affect you. There is also an important truth you must hold on to here. Reclaiming does not require you to prove anything to anyone. It does not require you to explain everything you have seen. It does not require you to justify your position. It requires you to stand in it. Because when you stand in your position with clarity, you naturally begin to shift the outcome. You begin to redirect how situations unfold around you. You begin to close the space that allowed others to move without your awareness. And that is how you reclaim. Quietly. Firmly. Without unnecessary conflict. This is also where confidence returns. Not the kind that is loud or defensive, but the kind that is grounded. The kind that comes from knowing you are no longer behind, no longer unaware, no longer at risk of being completely caught off guard. You have already stepped ahead of the situation, and that changes everything about what comes next. As May 28th approaches, this turning point becomes more defined. What was once forming without your awareness is now encountering your presence. What was once moving in one direction is now being influenced by your clarity. What was once almost completed is now being met with resistance, not from force, but from awareness. And awareness, at the right moment, is enough to change the outcome. You are no longer at risk of losing everything. You are now in a position to retain what matters, to protect what is yours, to move forward with clarity rather than confusion. And that is what this entire moment has been leading to. Type "I reclaim my position" in the comments if you are stepping fully into this turning point. Blessing code 1110 is now activated. Now you have arrived at the edge of it all. The moment where everything that has been revealed, everything that has been understood, everything that has been forming in silence, converges into one final point of decision. This is not a distant warning anymore. This is not something unfolding far ahead in time. This is immediate. This is present. This is now. The next 24 hours are not ordinary. They carry weight. They carry consequence. They carry opportunity. Because within this short window, something will finalize. Something will either move forward exactly as it was planned behind your back, or it will encounter the shift you have created through your awareness, your positioning, and your refusal to remain passive. This is where everything becomes real. You may begin to notice small but significant changes. A message that comes at an unusual time. A conversation that feels slightly forced. A decision that is suddenly brought to your attention without much explanation. These are not random developments. These are the final movements of what hath been forming, now beginning to step into visibility. And this is where your presence matters most. Not your reaction, not your emotions, but your presence. Because presence is what keeps you grounded when things attempt to move quickly around you. Presence is what allows you to observe without being pulled into confusion. Presence is what ensures that you do not fall back into old patterns of automatic agreement or delayed awareness. You are not the same as you were before this message. You see differently now. You think differently now. You respond differently now. And that difference is what will determine how these next 24 hours unfold for you. There is a final warning here, and it is simple but critical. Do not drift back into comfort. Do not convince yourself that everything is fine just because nothing has fully surfaced yet. Do not ignore the clarity you have gained simply because acting on it feels unfamiliar. Because this is the moment where many people lose their advantage. They become aware, but then they hesitate. They see the truth, but then they delay. They sense the shift, but then they return to old patterns. And in doing so, they allow what they could have prevented to move forward without resistance. That cannot be you. Not now. Not after everything you have seen. You are being called to remain steady, to remain aware, to remain aligned with the clarity that has been given to you. You do not need to rush. You do not need to force anything. But you must not fall back into passivity. Because passivity is what allowed this situation to form in the first place. And awareness is what will stop it from fully affecting you. There is also something powerful that happens when you hold your position during a moment like this. The outcome begins to shift. Not always dramatically, not always visibly at first, but subtly, in ways that redirect what was once certain. Plans that seemed fixed begin to encounter obstacles. Assumptions begin to weaken. Timelines begin to adjust. And all of this happens because you did not remain the same. Because you chose awareness over comfort. Because you chose alignment over assumption. Because you chose to act, even if quietly, within the time you were given. This is your final moment before the threshold. The final space where preparation turns into outcome. The final point where what was hidden either moves forward unchecked or meets the resistance of your clarity. And you are ready. Not because everything is perfect. Not because everything is fully revealed. But because you are no longer unaware. And that changes everything. Hold your position. Trust what you have seen. Stay aligned with what you now understand. Because these next 24 hours are not just about what is happening around you. They are about who you choose to be within it. And that choice will determine everything that follows. Type "I stand in clarity" in the comments if you are ready to hold your position. Blessing code 1212 is now activated. As this final moment settles into your spirit, understand this: what you have received is not just a message, it is a mantle of light meant to reach beyond you. Every seed you sow into this mission becomes a river flowing into lives still walking in darkness, still unaware, still one step away from losing what heaven is trying to protect. The word speaks, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days," and this is that moment where your giving becomes a living echo of truth. I step forward in faith in moments like this, and I am calling you to move with that same obedience now. This is not just support. This is participation in a divine assignment unfolding in real time. As you release your seed through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, you are activating a flow that heaven will return to you multiplied, restored, and aligned. Step into this now, and let your action speak louder than hesitation.